Here we go. Hi Trish, how are you?
Oh, very good, very good. It's a beautiful warm day here in Australia.
Excellent. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to interview you.
Yep.
And friends, here is Trish for us. So let me give a short brief about. There are so many credentials to her kitty. What I can tell is she was 14. She would never walk again. Was that she was told, and then there are a lot of things. By age of 30, she was 140 kilos. So friends, if you observe, there are certain practitioners who have evolved out of healing themselves. The deaf part, weight, personal anxiety and depression, which led her to explore different modalities like EFT, NLP, conversational hypnotherapy, Reiki. Did you spare anything? Diploma in
I,
health. Oh my God. And tell me more about yourself. The reason is, Trish, instead of telling the audience about just giving the brief, and it would be great if you tell about your own story, how all these obstacles and challenges in life led you to be in the place where you are. So, could you please tell about your journey, about your past, how
oh,
healing happened, etc.?
where it all sort of began as such, like, we go through life and we always have these terrible experiences and
Yes.
how it affected us and, how we reacted and things like that. And I had bought a business and I was in business for a couple of years and was doing really well. And then I went into work one day because I was working with my business partner. And
Mhm.
I went into work one day and there were all these bills all over the floor and the locks had been changed. And I'm like, what's going on here? And this was my personal downfall. I trusted my business partner to run the business. And I never looked at the bookwork. I just turned up to work, did my job, even though I was a partner, and I trusted her to do the rest. Anyway, um, all of a sudden, these people had told me I was going bankrupt
Oh my.
and I was losing my house, I was losing my car, I was losing my job. And this was all happening within like a couple of weeks. So I had no notice whatsoever. And here I was thinking I was safe, I was good, like I've always been a good citizen, help people, be nice, all this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden I've got the landlord banging on my door, where's my rent? All these the electricity was cut off and I'm just like, what's going on here? So I approached my business partner and I'm like, what has happened here? Like, we need to sort this out. And she literally turned to me and she goes, you work it out, and left the business. She walked out the door and I've never seen her again. And that was about probably 15 years ago. Never seen her again. She just left me. Anyway, I tried to save the business. So I spoke to the landlord, I spoke to the electrician company. I had about $15,000 of my own personal savings. And I'm like, right, I can save this business. Well, 12 months later, it was still going under. And I was working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the big brain idea that where I realized I couldn't do this anymore was one day when I was sitting in my car, bawling my eyes out, just crying because I couldn't bring myself to go into work to smile at the customers again when I wasn't making my ends reach and I was pretending everything was fine. Anyway, I spoke to a friend and he said to me, you have to go bankrupt. He goes, but at least this time you can control it. So I lodged for bankruptcy. And there was a man I played cards with, and he said, Trish, we're coming to repossess your house tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I thought I got some notice or something. He goes, no, 10 o'clock tomorrow, we're coming in. Whatever you can grab between 10 o'clock tomorrow and get out with is belonging to you. He goes, we don't normally tell you, but because I played cards with this man, he, gave me a heads up. So I scrambled. I just grabbed my clothes. I took my cat to a friend's place. I was like, look after my cat. I'm homeless. And then I was homeless. That was it. I had nowhere to live. And I lived under a bridge for quite some time, for 3 months in total. And one day I was so cold, and I was under the bridge and it was raining and it was so cold. And I was just like, just let me die. I'm a good person. Let me die. And I was crying and I was shaking and I was hungry and I was wet and it was dark. And I just couldn't cope with it anymore. And anyway, I must have fallen asleep at some stage. And when I woke up, it was like this warmth was on my face, like I had died and gone to heaven. And I remember thinking, I had this warmth on my face, and I remember thinking, wow, you granted my wish. Lord, thank you. You let me die and go to heaven. I'm a good person. And then a truck drove over the bridge and woke me up. And I was a bit upset about that. And I remember sitting bolt
Said about
upright.
not dying.
Yeah, I was still alive. And I was disappointed about that. And I woke up and I stood there and I just started screaming at the top of my lungs. I was screaming at the sun, "What do you want from me? Like, I've got nothing left. My family has deserted me because they're embarrassed of me. I've lost my business. I've lost my car. I have literally a backpack. I don't even own a pillow. Like, that's it." And I was screaming at the sun. And then I sat there for a few moments after I calmed down and I thought, oh my God, what is that smell? And it was me, because I hadn't showered in a few days because I was using the public toilets. Anyway, on that, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go to the library and I'm just going to get cleaned up as best as I can. And at the library, I remember it was a Thursday and they have free biscuits. So I got some food. And I was like, right, I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to get some bickies. So I went to the library, I got some biscuits, and then they had a free internet day. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll sit on this thing called the internet. Like, this is like 12 years ago now. It wasn't huge.
Yes.
And I had gone to the doctor and they were trying to get me into housing to get me off the streets. Single female at almost the age of 40 was on the streets. And I was just like, no, I can't do this. Anyway, I jumped onto the internet and these doctors had given me all of these pills to take. I had to take one in the morning, one in the afternoon, half of one with food. And there were so many pills, I couldn't work out what to take when and where. And I remember going to the library and I was sitting at the computer and all of a sudden I was like, I typed into the computer, natural ways to cure depression, because I knew I was depressed. I was going to kill myself if somebody else didn't do it for me. And up popped this thing where it said study hypnosis. It was a free course. I was like, all right. And the free course was 700 kilometers from where I lived.
Oh my God.
Right. And I've got no car. I've got no money. I'm not eligible for any help from the government because I didn't have an address. So they just went, well, you don't have an address, so we can't give you any money. And I went down to the deli because I was hungry and I remember there weren't any biscuits. And I went down to the deli and I was looking at the loaves of bread, trying to work out how I could steal a loaf of bread. And the man who owned the deli came up to me and he said, if you need it that badly, take it. And I just burst out crying. That man ended up being one of my godsends. Okay. There were two men and that was one of them. And I said to him, I said, look, I told him a bit of my story. I was bawling my eyes out. I said, I really want to go to Melbourne and study this hypnosis thing so I can fix my head. I said, I can't do this with all these pills. I can't do it. And and he gave me the loaf of bread and he gave me some spare pies because it was the end of the day. And he said, look, no one's going to buy them. Take them with you. So I ate them and then I went back at 6 a.m. the next day and I said to him, I'm going to work for you for free. I don't mind if I stack shelves or whatever. I said, I'm going to pay off everything that I owe you for the bread and the pies. And then at the end of each day, if you have anything left over, I would love to have it. I will work for it. And he turned around and he said to me, he goes, on the weekend, I'm driving to Melbourne. Do you want to come with me in the truck to go to this hypnosis course? I said, yeah. I said, it starts on a Friday night and it goes all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And he goes, perfect. He goes, I'll be in Melbourne on Friday at lunchtime. He goes, I come home on Monday, make sure at this place and jump in the truck and you can come home after I've picked up my stock. So that's what I did. I went to Melbourne, I went to this free hypnosis course, and I have never looked back since. As soon as they said to me, they're like, I think it was about $10,000 to do the next proper phase, like the proper hypnosis. And I just went, oh, I don't have that kind of money. I don't. And I spoke to the man who was running the course and I said, look, I said, I'm homeless. I said, I actually don't have the money, but can I pay it off? And as soon as I've paid it off, I'll attend the course. Even if you put your prices up, I will keep paying it off until I can do it. And he said to me, he goes, I want you to do this course, because this was in March and the course was in October. He goes, we'll start you on a payment plan. And it was $40 a week, big money to me because I didn't earn any money. And he said, in October, I want you to do this course. And I said to him, no, I said, I'm going to pay $40 a week. And once I've paid off this $10,000, I'm going to come and do your course. Well, it took me 2 years, but I paid it off and I got there and I was just so stoked. But that one free hypnosis course changed my whole life. Like, I had forgiven so many people. I had realized what cause and effect was and how I was blaming everybody else for my problems instead of going, you know what? You have the ability within you to fix this, to amend this. And that's what I did. And I haven't looked back. So yeah, if you've got a pillow, put your head on it and release all of your stress every time you go to sleep, because it is that one thing that will listen to all of your thoughts without judgment. So we always enjoy your pillow. Okay.
Amazing journey you have, Trish.
Thank you.
Very, like, I have this goosebumps listening to your story. Thank you very much for the inspiration, Trish.
Thank you. I didn't cry too much this time, so my makeup won't come off.
No, it was really the beauty of this interview series, which I tell all the experts who my interview is like, I am so fortunate to talk to different people from different parts of the world and let people know about these superheroes, not only in the movies. Hey guys,
Yeah.
see, we have living examples.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So, Krish, you went on to become a certified, hypnosis practitioner, and you have done so many. Okay,
Yeah.
rest is the history. I know. If anyone is interested, please go through the credentials of Trish over the website. I'm not going to read out to that.
Yeah. Add me on Facebook, whatever.
Yes,
I'm pretty cruisy.
yes. So, Trish, you have developed something called gut hypnosis. So, could you please tell more about it? Because there is clinical hypnosis, there are all sort of hypnosis, but I have never heard about gut hypnosis. So, could you please tell about it?
When it comes to hypnosis, there's all different modalities, as you know, out there. And gut hypnosis was one of those ones that, because I had gone through such trauma, I had irritable bowel syndrome. And
Okay.
then I had such severe anxiety that when I finally did get a place to live, I ended up finding a place to live in the back of an old shop. So the gentleman was kind enough to let me rent it, and it was just imagine a big empty room with carpet, no windows because it's at the back of an old shop. There's a shower that's propped up on bricks with a hose, so it's not a proper shower. There's a toilet, but it's beside a sink that you use as a kitchen as well. So I was at the back of this old shop, and he said to me, look, there's just an empty space because, I'd met him when I was walking the streets one night, and I used to pick up $2 coins because you could buy $2 worth of chips, and,
Hmm.
that would get you through. And I met him on the streets one night, and he said, look, I've got a place if you want to rent it and get yourself off the streets. I was like, yes, please. Anyway, I had irritable bowel syndrome and I had anxiety so bad that I would shake as soon as somebody came near me because I didn't want to talk to them because
Hmm.
they might think I was a bad person because I went bankrupt, and my family was really ashamed that I'd done something like that. Like, you don't do that stuff. Anyway, I got to a stage where I would pass gas and it would just come out, and I'll be like, oh my God, that was me. I'm the stinky one, you know. And even after studying this hypnosis, I still had some of these issues that were
Yes.
going on. And I was like, look, this has got to go deeper than this. Like, there's got to be something else that's deeper. And I came across what was known as the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve in your body, and it's the only nerve that's controlled unconsciously. So I started experimenting with my vagus nerve. And the way we communicate with the vagus nerve is via vibrations of our throat. So when we're telling the vagus nerve, because it has its own nervous system, it's known as the enteric nervous system, it has its own nervous system. So we need to neurologically rewire our own vagus nerve to make things more pleasant for us. And what was happening was I was getting these problems with my gut because of my external interpretation and then processing it internally. And then I had to go, well, how do I reprogram this nervous system that's controlled unconsciously by this unconscious nerve? Well, this nerve responds to vibrations and it responds to tone. So once I started working on my own tonality, that's when my gut started to get better. So it wasn't about attitude. It wasn't in the mind of the mind. So I started doing things like that. So I would hum in a certain frequency and then I'd feel fantastic that day. Because we've got to understand that originally, when you were inside your mum's womb, your gut and your brain were in the same area. And then as you grew into a child, they actually separated and got connected by your spinal cord. And that's what we call the brain-gut connection.
Okay.
Makes
Something
sense,
new.
doesn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it makes sense. So that's what was happening. I had gone through such trauma in my life that I had developed this irritable bowel and this gas problem, but I wasn't willing to put the effort in to eat healthy food or to exercise or anything like that. And I was like, hang on, there's got to be a way that you can have a good eating regime and get rid of this problem. So that's what I did. I started working on the vagus nerve and the different tones within the body, and I came up with gut-directed hypnosis. So, and that's what I teach these days because I was the living embodiment of it. And then I met my partner and my partner's brother on our second date. We ended up spending it in the hospital car park because his brother had keeled over in such pain that he was rushed to the hospital. And I sat in the car park because I'm like, it's not an appropriate time for me to meet your parents, you know. And he got diagnosed with Crohn's disease and ended up having a stoma put into his body. So that's where they put a bag, and he had half of his intestines removed. And because I had done this, I created this gut-directed hypnosis. I said to him, I said, look, I said, can I work with you over the next 12 months and we'll see what we can do. So over the next 12 months, we experimented with the gut-directed hypnosis. We got some other people on board, and he got so well that he ended up having the stoma reversed. So it was phenomenal. And even his doctors have said, we have never known for people to get it reversed when it was that far gone. So yeah, so fast forward 8 years and my partner's brother still has not had surgery to add the stoma back in. So he's managing all of that with his mindset, his mentality, making sure his tone is correct as well, and making sure that he listens to some vibrations like solfeggios and things like that. So yeah, that's how that came about. It was kind of one of those things that you kind of stumbled across and you went, oh, well, I can help out one of my friends or my family members. So you kept going with it. And then all of a sudden, one of my girlfriends said to me, Trish, you've got to teach people this. And I'm like, no, don't be silly. Nobody wants to know this. And fast forward 6 years, and I now have a student body of over 500 students. We've trained people all over Australia, New Zealand. We were meant to go to Canada last year, but that, kind of got sidelined. So yeah, that's what we started doing, teaching people gut-directed hypnosis. So yeah.
That's amazing. And Trish, is it offline training or is it available online as well?
It's available online on my webpage. So you can do it online. It is recognized by the IICT, so it is recognized all across the world. So in the US, in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, India, it's recognized training. We had it put through the insurance companies as well. So we made sure that it was all good to go and they all recognized it. And then it's also recognized by the Australian Hypnosis Association and a couple of other bodies as well. And you can do it online. Which is self-paced. You just do it at your own pace. If you have any questions, always reach out and ask. I don't believe there's a stupid question out there if you genuinely don't know. And we'll also be running workshops via Zoom next year. So we're yet to book the dates for that yet. And we're hoping that we can open up and start traveling and teaching it in person next year. So at the moment, it's self-paced online.
Yes.
So yeah, everything crossed.
Sometimes, suddenly certain questions come to me, which I observe in people. And I want to ask, in connection with this directed hypnosis, let's say some people who have gone through very painful relationship, abusive relationship, and whatever, it could be not only the romantic relationship, any sort of relationship. At one point, they have stopped trusting themselves and others. And they say that, no, I feel very uncomfort in my gut. I'm not able to date anyone. I'm not now uh, able to invest into new business, or they're closed. So somewhere like this modality, which you said, someone has reversed their health issues and all that, can it be applied in the relationship issues healing as well, Trish?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our gut is always talking to us. It's like an unconscious mind. But the difference is that this gut connection can only talk to you with feelings. That's the only way it can communicate. And that's why it never leads you astray. That's why whenever you come into a situation, even if it's in a relationship and you're like, oh, I'm not quite sure how to interpret that, or that kind of hurt, it's your gut actually telling you of something that you don't want anymore, or you need to do a better way. That's what it is. And sometimes, and our gut is the speaker of all truth. It really is. It's either telling us that we need to move away from something because it is uncomfortable, or it's telling we need to move towards something that's going to be uncomfortable, but we have to push past it. So if we're getting that gut feeling with someone where you're just like, oh, I'm not sure about that, then we need to sit down and have that serious discussion about how this is amounting and how this is building up, because we really don't want it to build up to any kind of resentment or failure, or that block where we just hit that wall and then we burn out.
Yes.
So it's constantly speaking to you. You're the one that has to sit down and have a really good chat with it and go, hey, buddy, what do you want? So listen to your gut. It's like your heart. It will never lead you astray. Okay.
And okay, a person is trying to communicate to gut. Let's say they got certain insights, yet the past comes into the picture now.
Yes.
Past experiences, past trauma comes as an interference.
Yes.
What?
Yeah. And this is where we go into the area known as Hellstromism. Have you heard of Hellstromism before?
No.
So Hellstromism is muscle memory. And because your muscles cover your entire body and your central nervous system weaves in your entire body as well, your muscles store memories. But at the end of the day, the muscles are only holding on to those memories that it holds dear to itself. And that's why sometimes when you're drinking a cup of coffee or something and you get to the end of it and you're like, oh, it's all gone. Who drank that? And that's because you've trained your muscles that this makes me feel good. I like this drink. And you can do it without even thinking about it. And this is muscle memory. And this is where the past can sometimes come in and then impede on us, because we've got to understand that the stomach is in there. So you've got the gut in there and it's surrounded by all these muscles trying to support it. Now, if these muscles tense up because something's scaring it or making it feel uncomfortable, sometimes because your heart is a muscle, it'll give you a beat. It'll go boom, boom. That's Hellstromism. That's a muscle memory coming in, telling you, we've been here before. We didn't like that, giving you a heads up. Now, when it comes to that muscle memory and actually speaking to that part of you with the Hellstromism, that's where we need to go into a parts therapy of some sort and actually have a conversation with those memories.
Okay,
So,
thank
yeah.
you. That clarifies. So we'll go a little more deeper into. You also offer inner child healing course as well. Could you please tell? Of course, we are, it has become a common terminology now, healing the inner child. So
Yes.
what exactly, what do you cover in that, and how does inner child healing work? Could you please tell a little bit more about it, Krish?
Healing of the inner child was one of those things that uh, it was a bit more complex. Like one day I was sitting inside my clinic
Mhm.
and I had this client come in and she had anxiety and depression, and it didn't matter what I did, it just wasn't working. It's like she'd go out great and then everything would go pear-shaped. And you could tell that she wanted it. Anyway, I was sitting there and she was due to come in for a session. And I had messaged my father on the phone and I said to him, "How did your football game go?" And he said, "They wanted the ball so badly, they fumbled it." And I'm like, "Oh, so they lost." And that's when I had this light bulb. I'm like, "Oh, maybe my client's like this, where she wants it so badly that she keeps mucking it up." And then I thought, right, how do we amend this? So, how do we create this solution rather a problem? And I thought to myself, we need to go back to very basic stuff. So, very basic stuff of a child. Anyway, I did some parts therapy with her, and she mentioned how when she was a child, she had had cancer, and her grandmother didn't listen to her when she was in hospital because she wanted a cuddle. And I thought to myself, like, wow, I'm really going to sit down and start looking into this. Anyway, Carl Jung had worked with Sigmund Freud back in the era of hypnosis. So I started reading some books about him. And then he talked about the Jungian archetypes and how there are 12 Jungian archetypes, and every single one of us fit into those as a child, as an adult, and as a shadow self. So what I did was I went back to like my dad and I talked to him about some of this stuff because he doesn't understand it. He thinks it's all woo woo and I've joined some cult. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to get any answers that are real, I'm going to talk to this man who doesn't like it. So I talked to him about some of this stuff and he gave me some real insight about people that just don't understand it. So I started writing out all this stuff and then I started dreaming about it. And then I had this client coming in and I was like, right, we need to do this and we need to do this and we need to do this. And then all of a sudden, we only had done like 2 sessions and she had this breakthrough.
Wow.
And what we'd done is I'd sat her down and I said, look, let's just discover your Jungian archetype. And I took her through the protocol and we discovered these 3 layers to herself. So one was her inner child and how it reacts to the world. One was her adult self and how it reacts to the world. And then she had the shadow or the ego self, which is also a Jungian archetype, and how it reacted to the world. The thing is, her shadow self had taken over so much that the inner child just stayed sheltered and quiet. So she had repressed herself. And then the adult self would get defensive, which would then she'd say, "Oh, look, I'm just beside myself. I don't know what to do." And she'd use those words like, "I am so torn." Well, now you've got the 3 selves being torn away from each other, and she doesn't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So once she discovered her inner child and what the inner child was, then discovered the adult self and what the adult self was and how to balance the two, all of a sudden she realized that the shadow self is a good thing, but only when the inner child and the adult are no longer balanced. The shadow self only comes out when the inner child and the adult are not balanced to protect them. It's not to live and breathe. It's literally that part of you that goes, "Hang on, I'm not happy." And then you go, "Oh, I'm really sorry about that. That's not normally like me." But it's that shadow self that's like, "No, hang on. If I don't speak out, if I don't act out, then you're going to keep doing this. And one of that or other part of you is going to get sad and slowly dissipate." So once she had discovered that, she realized how she'd repeated certain chapters in her life, why she'd gone for these particular partners her whole life and it had always ended the same, why she was still stuck
Very
in this.
important point you have
Yeah.
brought out, Trish, like repetitive patterns of life.
Yeah, yeah. And once she realized this, that's when she really started to flourish and bloom, because she realized what the archetype was, when it was getting tired and when it was being built up. And she could then recognize that. And once she recognized it, that's when she could make that conscious decision of whether she wanted to continue doing this until she became exhausted, or whether she realized, you know what, I've got to have a break and then I'm going to come back. And then you also, within that, you also discover your complete opposite of your inner child and self. So that's that part, that Jungian archetype that you're just never going to align with. You love the idea of it, but you just don't have the energy for it. And once she realized that, that's when she began to up her standards about herself and go, no, I can't. I just can't. I really want to, but I can't. And that's when she began to take back her power. So that's how I came across that. And I just started writing it out. I said to my students, hey, does anybody want to do this with me? I want to know what your results are and feedback. And it was just phenomenal. And, you know, we had like I think it was over 150 students in their very first session, all across the world, that were just loving it and really discovering those patterns that they've been doing that were housed in that inner child. So it's just a beautiful experience.
Trish, there are different styles of this inner child work. So various teachers teach in different ways. I've come across one challenge where people are not able to recollect their childhood memories.
So
So, yeah.
for it doesn't actually go into the childhood memories per se.
Mhm.
What it goes into is it goes into the enhancement of the current self.
Okay.
So instead of
Please
going,
explain a little
yeah,
more.
yeah. So
Okay. Yeah.
instead of going back into those childhood memories, because a lot of people like, I don't know who I was as a child, I can't remember it, I was abused or something like
Uh-huh.
that. We don't have to go into those memories. What we can do is we can go into the inner child itself and ask the inner child, what does it want from us? We don't need to remember the memories, and we don't want to. But what we do want to know is how we can move forward so that we can be relaxed again, content again, happy again, whatever it is. So we don't actually have to go into those memories. There is a session that you can add onto it called the trauma release session. And that's where we actually do a hypnosis technique known as gestalting. And gestalting is where you go back in time, you monitor the memory from a different position. So it's as if you're watching it from the outside in. And then you actually have a discussion with your own self inside of that memory, but you can only find all of the good things about yourself. And I will have my client in hypnosis and I will say to them, whilst you're there connecting with yourself inside that memory, I want you to finish this sentence. Find all the good things about yourself. Finish this sentence, I am. And then I let the client just talk. And they'll say, I am strong. And then I'll say to them, what else?
What else?
I am happy. What else?
Yes.
And then once they've found all those I ams, because they might take 2 or 3 minutes, it might be there for an hour. Once they've found all of those I ams, I get them to repeat the I ams back to themselves out loud. And I'll actually say to them, now repeat after me, I am strong. And the client will say, I am strong. Now repeat after me, I am loved. I am loved. And I'll get them to repeat it back. Then we bring them out of that memory and we go to the next one. So there is a trauma one we can add into the healing of the inner child, but we don't actually go into that memory. We
Memories
just
and
watch.
re-traumatize and all that kind.
Yeah, we don't do that. Like, yeah, it's like you're watching it happen to somebody else, but then you're looking at it from a good perspective of how did you evolve from this. There's also a piece in there. Have you ever heard of the term corpus delicti? So there's a piece in the Heal the Inner Child that's known as corpus delicti. And corpus delicti is a terminology that's used even to today in the homicide squad. So when they find someone that's been murdered. And corpus delicti talks about how there is no body of crime until there is a body. And then it reiterates to the client how they have become their own body of crime because nobody can see their hurt or pain. And then we go through a whole protocol with that. It only takes like 20 minutes about how they can remove themselves from becoming their own corpus delicti. So remove themselves from becoming their own body of pain. So yeah, very powerful stuff.
Yes. The reason I'm talking is just the moment we hear inner child healing, we relate to what we already know. I know
Yeah.
about. That's the reason I wanted to understand what is your version, how it got developed, and how unique it is, and what is covered in that.
Well,
Thank
it's
you.
actually the first practitioner's course of its kind in Australia. And it was one of those ones that when I presented it to the international body for recognition, I was really nervous because I'm like, no, they're all going to think I'm wacko talking about these Jungian archetypes and things like that. And they were just blown away. Like, you know how somebody smiles at your work and you're like, oh, good, you like it. Oh, this is
Wow.
great. You know, it was one of those moments because I'm like, this stuff is real. Like, it's not just another journey with fairies or unicorns or something like that. This is real stuff, you know. So yeah, and it's amazing how many, even my own students who are therapists who have gone through it and then discovered where in their business they've been going wrong. Because I'm like, your core didn't align, did it? And they're like, no. And I said, right, let's go in this direction instead. Come on, let's go. So yeah.
And Krish, the next curious question about this is again, you have developed anxiety protocol as well, because this one thing is enough to take away the peace of mind. So, what if I fail? What if my partner cheats? What if this doesn't work? What if? My God. And uncertainty obviously triggers this anxiety. So could you please tell more about your anxiety protocol?
So with the anxiety and depression protocol, when I did my training, like you were taught all these wonderful techniques. And then I went out into the world thinking I'm going to help all these people lose weight and quit smoking. And then the first person that ever booked in with me was a guy wearing a tin hat. And he said to me, can I help him evolve to the fourth dimension? And I was like, what? How does that, what did I just learn? You know, I've learned hypnosis. I don't know anything about this other stuff, you know. And then I got a client for trichomania, and I was like, sure, come in, we'll try some stuff, you know. And then my best friend, she had a nervous breakdown from anxiety and depression. She was in the hospital and she goes, Trish, I need you to help me with my anxiety and depression with hypnosis. And I was like, sure, no worries. I've got all these great techniques, but I don't know what to do, where and when and why. And I thought this is one of the big problems with the industry is that we learn all these great techniques, but then how do you put them into a certain protocol? Now, the protocol is always liquid, so you can adapt it for your client, but it gives you a basic recipe to follow. So I explain it to my students. Imagine that you're making a cake. We're going to give you a basic recipe. So you've got flour, eggs, milk, sugar, but you get a client that comes in and they want chocolate. So put some chocolate in it. You've got a client that comes in, they're like, you know what, I want chocolate, but I don't want spearmint. Okay, throw the spearmint out, put some chocolate chips in. So we give you a basic recipe to follow, and then you can adapt it to your client's individual needs. So we usually start off with a NLP questioning session at the start. And then you'll go into the hierarchy of emotions. So your anger, your sadness, your frustration, etc. And then once you've gone through all of that, that's when you'll start building up towards self-esteem and self-confidence and things like that. Because when your client first comes in with anxiety and depression, and I had a lady that I booked in just today who's had 27 years of being on medication. And she said to me, she goes, I don't even know what happiness is anymore. Because if you say to your client, right, we're going to do some hypnosis, and by the end of it,
I just want to ask 27 years of medication for anxiety.
mm,
Okay.
Yeah, 27 years. And when you're getting clients like that, and then you say to them, look, you're going to have hypnosis, you're going to feel happy again, they can't imagine it.
Hmm.
So when you take them through an anxiety depression protocol, you're easing them into it. Because sometimes with a lot of these clients, when you promise them or even make the notion that they can feel better, it's scary
Yeah.
because they felt better once before and it led to them feeling bad and they still feel bad. And what if that gets worse? So with the anxiety depression protocol, it breaks all that down and it slowly eases the client to feel a little bit better each time, also whilst guiding the therapist in exactly the steps to take so that the client doesn't get overwhelmed and just run away. There are a lot of therapists out there that will say, you can fix anxiety in one session. I'm like, well, I can fix anxiety with a block of chocolate, but it doesn't mean it's going to help me in the long term. So the anxiety depression protocol, it does go for quite a long period of time. So depending on whether your client is mild, average or severe anxiety, it can range between 6 to approximately 15 weeks. So it's a long protocol, and I actually call it a life project
Yeah.
when I take my clients through it. And I say to them, I say, look, I said, like I said to one client a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, honey, I said, I don't want to see you in 10 weeks' time. I wanted to go away and just fly and be amazing. I said, I don't want to keep seeing you every week for the next 2 years, you know, and she's been doing fantastic ever since. So it's all about helping the therapist to know exactly what to do whilst always keeping it a little bit liquid for your client so you can change it up just for them. So yeah.
So next question is about quitting this smoking part. Like, it feels like it is next to impossible to quit smoking, or about alcohol addiction and all this stuff, Trish. So
Yeah.
could you just tell how hypnosis, especially the protocols that you have developed, gonna help people to quit smoking or any other addiction?
Mhm. So when it comes to quit smoking, I'll be honest, I hated quit smoking when I first started. I left school thinking I was going to make all of this money doing one hypnosis session, and I'd work like 2 hours a week and just do quit smoking clients. And it went very, very badly, very, very fast. And I hated it. Anyway, one of my girlfriends, Deborah, came up to me and she said for her 50th birthday, she wants to quit smoking and she wanted me to do it. And I said flat out, I said, no. I said, forget it. And she goes, how much? I said, no. I said, I'm not doing it. I said, I hate doing it. And anyway, she turns around, she goes, right, I'll give you $600. And $600 to me was like, wow, $600. This is great. And she goes, I'll give you $600 and I'll come in for a couple of sessions. I'm like, all right, no worries. Anyway, and Deb's one of these people that if you do something wrong, she'll tell you. Okay, that's the kind of person she is. Anyway, I really, really like, got inside my own head about this. And I was like, no, let's just do something different. So I wrote down all of the previous clients that I had that had failed and where I believed they had failed and how I could tweak my hypnosis protocol to be better. So what I did was I brought in a huge leverage task. So I brought in a leverage task where they fill in this diary and they do it for the entire week leading up to their first session. Now, if you don't do that leverage task, you don't get the session. It's as
Okay.
simple as that.
Okay.
There's like, no, forget it. We're going to put you in credit, but we're not doing the session. Anyway, Deb did the task. And when I saw this, I'm like, wow, this one leverage task has made her want to do this. And then I did some more research about what smoking addiction really was about. And then I learned all about hypoglycemia and how the smoking affects the blood sugar levels. And then I started looking at some logical stuff so I could talk to the logical side with the person and then the emotional side. And then I worked out how to integrate some parts therapy into it as well that was future paced. So these parts that were in the current now, get them to project into the future and how they would react in these certain stressful situations, and then bring them back to the present. So I experimented, I did that, and holy moly, she was smoking 50 smokes a day and she quit. And I was like, oh, well,
Cigarettes a day.
yeah, yes, 50 smokes a day. Like she literally would be finish one and do another. And, and she was going in for heart surgery, so she had to quit. And I was just like, wow, I must have hit it lucky with Deb, And then her best friend Leanne asked me to do it as well because she smoked as well, and she quit. And I was like, oh, surely you can't hit lucky twice. So I booked in another one and they quit, and I booked in another one and then they quit. Then I booked in another gentleman and he'd reduced all the way down because he decided he just wanted to have one in the morning when he got up.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, I've actually come up with something that works 90% of the time. I'll admit, you can't get a 100% hit rate with quit smokers, but you can definitely get a 90% hit rate, which gives you a bit more confidence. So that's what I did. And, and I must admit, I actually really enjoy quit smoking clients so much now that I'll just run a group session. I'm like, everybody, come on in.
Now you're very comfortable and enjoy it.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. But in the hypnosis protocol that I've got for the smoking, it teaches you how to find out those clients that really don't want to quit straight off the bat.
Oh, wow.
So it teaches you the questions you need to ask them and the things to look for so that you can recognize what it is that whether they're going to quit or not. And it also has what we call, because I love mentalism as well. And it has some mentalism questions in there that are trick questions. So because people are continuously playing a game of Family Feud where they're like, I've got to answer fast, you can ask those questions and then they'll blurt out an answer and you can go, no, if you're not going to quit. I don't tell my client that, but I already know that they're not going to quit and I'm trusting my gut on that. And I'll say to them, I don't believe that now is the right time for you. However, you can do this leverage task and come back in a week. And if you do, we'll get on with the quit smoking. I guarantee you 100% of those people never come back.
Oh.
Every single time. And sometimes when you ask some of those mentalism questions, they'll just blurt out an answer because they feel they have to answer. I had one gentleman turn around and he goes, oh, I'm just quitting because I met a girl. And I'm like, well, that's not the right reason, is it?
Yes.
and he turned to me and he goes, oh, I'm not going to quit, am I? And I said, you will eventually, but just not right now. I said, she is not the right leverage for you. And he came to me like 6 months later. The relationship didn't work out. He then ended up quitting, but he was in the right place to do it. But without those questions, I would not have gotten him to blurt out an answer to get that. So yeah, there are certain things that you have to ask so that you can know whether this person is truly committed or not. And if there's any seed of doubt in your mind, don't take them on. Okay.
And Trish, because a person has smoked for quite a long time, there is this substance abuse also. They're like, have, do they have to be dependent on some medication as well as hypnosis, or just hypnosis alone has helped people quit this smoking? Okay.
Yeah, hypnosis alone. And I always give my clients some natural stuff at the end of the hypnosis as well. So they get an audio, they learn new techniques to cleanse their tongue and things like that for the first 72 hours, etc. They learn about, mood swings and the lowering of their hypoglycemia and things like that. So once they recognize that stuff, they become empowered. And if they get to a stage where they're like, you know what, I went back smoking, and I say to them, did you do the lemon task? Because I have a task called the lemon task. And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, there you go. Like I've really had to put on my big girl panties when it comes to being a therapist these days, of that cause and effect, going, well, you're at effect. We had this discussion. You didn't want to do it. There's nothing else we can do. But one thing I do highly recommend that is if you are a therapist and you're listening now, make sure you have all your paperwork sorted out when people sign the dotted line. No refunds for any reasons. Okay. Have that all sorted out. So if they do come back on you, you can show them the contract and go, no, see, you signed here. Thank you. Okay. Because you've got to make a living as well. And your mortgage broker doesn't care whether you gave a refund or not. It still needs its rent money.
Yes. Good. And probably the last question Trish, for this interview. You have this recording device without computer. I was curious. No computer required, no software to record
Yes.
our own, hypnosis recording. So could you please
Mhm.
tell more about the
Yep.
device?
So the RISE device, that was one of those things that kind of came about because of our students asking us. And my partner has got a degree in music, so he knows all about microphones, technology. He builds computers for a living. And I came in one day and I said to him, I said, I really need to be able to record some of my audio sessions. And I now live in a big old pub. I've got a big vintage pub. And where my clinic room is, it goes straight onto the main street. So you can hear people talking and dogs barking. And I said to my partner, I said, I really need to get a system of some sort going where I can record the session, but I don't want to be tied to like where the PowerPoint is. And I don't want to have a gigantic computer or a laptop to plug this device into. And he said to me, he goes, leave it with me. I'll get back to you. Well, about 2 weeks later, he'd come back to me with this thing. And I was just like, wow, that's tiny. I like it. And he's like, this is your microphone, you do this, and here's your headphones. So you've got your headphones for your clients, your headphones for you. You can talk to your client, you can play music, and you can record it all in this one device. Now, if you want to hook it up to your computer to edit the audio, you can. But you don't have to. You can just literally record it and then off you go. So it just was one of those things that I did out of necessity. My students had been asking me, but I was like, no, too hard for me. But my partner already knew how to do it. So he invented it, and he's been wanting to work more in the business anyway, because, we've been so busy. And yeah, so that's what he's been building. So you can record with your clients, or you can just record your audios because you want to put them online to sell them. You can do a podcast with it if you want to. If you're a singer, you can become a singer. You can also do a group session. So you can have up to 4 people who all with headphones on, hooking into the device, and then they can hear you talking whilst they're all in hypnosis or meditation or anything like
Anything.
that. So yeah, it's a really cool little system. And as much as it kind of looks like, oh, I've got all these knobs on it, John sets all that up for you before you even get it. And then he gives you a step-by-step little card system to put on each one. And you just go, right, number 1, do this, number 2, do that. And you set it all up. So it's really cool. It's really cool.
Awesome. I think Trish, you should be called hypnoscientist for coming up with gut directed hypnosis, inner child with unique protocol where you have embedded Jungian archetypes, and it
Yeah.
was a complete thing. And then your smoking protocol is different. Your
Yeah, it's different.
protocol for anxiety is different. It was amazing talking to you,
Thank you.
Trish.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing up these gifts, to
You're
be,
welcome.
yeah. So that, there's practitioners also, whoever friends who are watching, different, there are different healers, there are therapists, there are coaches, there are EFT practitioners and all that. So definitely they'll get benefited knowing about these protocols, because there's it is better to use these ready-made protocols instead of trying to reinvent the wheel again.
Yeah. It puts everything step by step. Like you can't muck it up. You really can't. Just week 1, do this. Week 2, do that. Like so simple. It reduces overwhelm for the therapist, making your job more enjoyable. And then you can just enjoy your life outside of the client and just go with the flow, knowing that everything is right there, ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you very much,
No
Trish.
worries. Thank you for having me.